Hi everyone, welcome back to Pierce the Heart Lessons from my home studio. For those who do not know me yet, my name is Joanne Wayulo Pierce, and I'm an artist and educator from Long Island, New York. So tonight we're going to be working on a rabbit montage, and I thought this would be a good subject to do because I'd like you to learn to do a couple of different poses and sketches on one page. So artists throughout time have done animals, and a very famous rabbit painting is by an artist named Albert Dürer, and I'll be putting information about him on my Instagram, and I'd love for you to look into it. It's from 1502, and it's absolutely fascinating. He was also a mathematician and scientist. So, okay. So this montage is from some of my photos and my sketches that I made in my sketchbook. The last place I lived had many rabbits in the yard, and I loved to sit outside and sketch them. When you're doing a montage, you're studying, when you're drawing, you're studying the structure of that animal, and you can catch them sometimes when they're eating clover or sleeping, and you can pretty much sketch them quickly while they're doing that. And for example, this rabbit is from a photograph I took. So I was able to spend a long time creating the fur and I'll talk to you more about how you do that later on or in another lesson. So again, a montage is on one page, and it's several poses. Tonight we're just going to have time to draw this big guy in detail, and this is just a line drawing. But I want to show you how to start to lay out a montage. So let's say you're outside and you have your sketchbook and there's a rabbit on the lawn. You can begin to do a sketch of the way he is standing or sitting or lying down. And when you do your different sketches, I want you to also think about the composition. You want them to fit on the page in a pleasing way. Okay, so as usual, the way we always begin is with our ovals. And so here we go. I'm going to start with our big guy. I'm going to do an oval for the head. And again, this is how we find our shapes and proportions and make sure they fit on the page. I'm drawing dark so the camera can see, but you will be drawing these lines very lightly at home. An oval for this back leg, the front leg. And while I'm doing these ovals, I'm looking at my proportions, my location, my sizes. And with animals, you usually do 2 or 3 circles or ovals to get their body shape. Okay, so this top guy, I'm going to do an oval for his head, a couple of circles to help me later when I'm going to draw the structure of those cheeks, oval for the ears. And this is also a time where you see how wide that ear is and if they're level or angled. Okay, so when we do this guy, oval for the head. Now, I have a tendency to go off the page, which I did in this one, because I got so involved with the head and detail before I really looked at my structure. But I originally wanted this guy to be smaller on the page. So I'm going to give you a trick, and I've said it in other lessons, but for people just joining us, I learned this from a fellow student in college, we're going to put in the feet at the bottom, some ovals for the feet first, and then we're going to do the oval for the body. We're going to look at the ears. This guy doesn't have big ears. And again, it's on an angle. They're on an angle. When you're doing a subject on a page, you don't want to be too close to the edge of the page. That creates tension, and it's not a comfortable drawing. And then we have this little guy. He was sitting looking away from me and just looking over his shoulder like, I think she's staying in that chair, but I'm not quite sure. And when you have an animal in this direction, it's foreshortened. So we would do a big oval for most of his body and his back, a smaller oval for the shoulder, body area, an oval for the head, and an oval for the ears. Little oval here for the foot. So after you have these complete and you're happy with the size and the shape and the proportions, we're going to go to the contour, and that is the outline of the drawing. So basically I'm connecting the ovals. I'm gonna go his shoulder, his back end. So the tail will be less of a perfect circle, more of a realistic shape. I'm going to go back up to the head, connect the ears. So this ear is behind the head. We'll get more involved with the detail of the head in a little bit. Neck, down to the leg, and to the paw. We'll worry about those details in a little bit. Leg, connect those two ovals, give them a tummy, and to the foot. And the same with these. This is just a head, so it's a little simpler. And connect the ear. And the cheek comes out to about here. And the head, that ear is behind there. Okay, so this guy would be easy to connect, because we don't really see much of the details. There's a little bit of an ear behind him. Oh, let's give him a tail. And this one is a bit more challenging. It seems simple, but it can be more challenging. He's looking off this way, but his body is straight. Comes down and around to the paws at the feet. And we can do two ovals for those hanging front paws. And again, we're looking at the distance from here to here and from here to here to get the correct size of those paws. Okay? All right, so that's how we start. And those of you who watch me each week, you know that's how we always start, with the ovals and then the contour. And because I don't have time to erase those lines, and because I draw in a black colored pencil, I have prepared a contour drawing sketch of all our rabbits ahead of time. A great thing to do also is use stuffed animals, especially for children and young people. And so many of the stuffed animals look so real now. That's a great subject to sit and draw. Alrighty. Now, because I'm certain that my proportions and locations are correct, I can use a departure point and begin to draw the details of this big guy. I'm going to go from here, this ear, down, to find the location of the eye. And the rabbit's eyes are fun to draw. They're very, very round, a nice big pupil. You can put a little value in there. And they usually have a bumpy area, similar to a horse. Bone structure there. A little bit of a triangle at that edge. So I'm looking at my distance from here to here and here to here. Now I'm going to, and you know, you don't have to exactly follow where I draw. If you're more comfortable starting at a different part of the animal, that's absolutely fine. This is the fun part of a rabbit because they have the most wonderful bumps. And then you get down to the cutest nose and you can just easily lay that in with just a simple line like that, and you've got the indication of the nose. So here we have a bit of the cheek. Right, this area is usually pretty rounded, and this area here. And the mouth and the chin. And at this time I'm going to do a few lines of shading. That helps me find my location and if my drawing is accurate. Also at this time, we can put in some whisker dots. And flick some whiskers. So you're pressing a little hard when you start and you're lifting up quickly because you want this part of the line to be a little thicker and this part a little thinner. And you want to change the lines. You don't want them too uniform. That would be boring. So now we're going to go up. This part of his head. We have time, we can put in. So I'm not exactly shading, I'm just doing some lines in this line drawing to indicate, begin to try to indicate the structure of that head. We'll go back up to the ears now. And they're also a lot of fun to draw. A nice little bump there. So I'm looking at this line, it's almost vertical, a little bit off the vertical. Dark tip up there. And I'm looking at my shape here, and I see that it comes just slightly. There's a little negative space between this ear and this ear. We're going to go up. And this is where we think about our basic shapes. So this is like a triangle. And even all these years later, I still think in basic shapes. With a curve of this ear, the little edge of the ear. We'll do a couple of lines here. And a little bit here because the head is a sphere, so depending on where your light source is, you're going to have shadow, just like a sphere. And if we'll do a few lines to indicate under his chin. Now, as you'll see in this drawing that I prepared for you, most of these lines are just a solid black line. And that's what I wanted to show up on the camera. But if you notice down here, while I'm drawing, I'm going to have naturally, some lines are thicker and thinner than others, darker and lighter than others. And that's what we want in a drawing. It's what makes a drawing interesting. Also, when your hand moves and smears, that's okay too. You can do it purposefully if you want to give a shadow a little value to your subject. So smearing is a good thing. So we're going to come around here, and the leg goes up into the body a bit. There's a nice curve here, and we go down to the paw, and I have 2 lines that just indicate that paw, and up, a curve. This is the fun part about when we're doing our outline. The different curves and bumps, and that takes time to learn them and see them. So don't be hard on yourself if you don't get it right away. Okay. So I'm looking at my negative space from here to here. Yep, I like that. So I'm going to start to draw the paw, and I'm seeing what is the angle. It's pretty horizontal to the page. A little bit of a bump on his leg. 2 lines to indicate the paw. There's a little bit of shadow under that leg. And then we're going to see this distance. And there we have the back of that leg. And we go up, and we've got that wonderful hip. And again, could put a couple of lines there and there to help define the structure. Let's go up to his head again. So we have the shoulder. We want to make sure we have that curve nice. Then it comes sort of straight down to that tail. And this, now because we're getting a little bit more realistic, we can make the tail more realistic than just a circle. One more shadow here. Give him a little shadow on his paw. A couple of lines to indicate the inside of the ear. Couple of lines to indicate the shadow that ear is behind. When you do an eye, it's really important to leave some white or erase a bit of white, or you can use a oil pastel that will really keep your animal or human being alive, the light reflection in the eye. So if your drawing has gotten too dark and you can't erase it, I don't want you to press really hard, because that will cause an indentation in your paper, or you might rip your paper. So don't be stubborn. Just go get the white pastel. And I can say that because I know, because a lot of times I will be very stubborn. Oh, so. Alrighty. Let's see. I'm just deciding what to work on next. I'm glad I have time, because I'd like to work with you on how to begin doing texture of fur. So when you want to get the effect of fur, it takes patience and time, but it's very relaxing. there are several techniques to do fur. I'm just going to play with this guy's head for a second as I'm talking to you about doing fur. You can use your pencil on its side and you get just a soft value. And depending on the softness of your pencil, you can get darker with the same pencil, or you can change pencils to get darker and lighter. So some animal portraits are done just simply with this kind of shading. I love to do very little lines that follow the contour of the animal's body. So, and as we talked about earlier with a stuffed animal, even with a stuffed animal, you can see the texture and which direction those hairs are going in. In order to do this technique, well, I've used both on this guy. This is shaded here with this technique. You need to use a very, very sharp pencil. So I highly recommend that you buy a lot of hand sharpeners, especially if you're working in colored pencil. You do not want to use the electric pencil sharpeners. It will eat up your pencils, and pencils are very expensive. If you press harder, you will have a darker line. So if you're in a shaded area, like the back of his head, I would just press harder. And it's also, again, that flick motion. It's all in the wrist. You want to vary the length of your lines so it's not too uniform, and the location of them. So we talked about, so you want your pencil line, right now my pencil is getting dull. So I'm going to use it to shade in, do a little shading on the ear. I usually have about 5 pencils going at once for the different levels of sharpness. Now also, in this area where it's light, you can leave the light of the paper. But if you've begun to do your lines and you think that area is a little too dark, that's what the kneaded eraser is awesome for, because it's hard to show you with the black colored pencil, but you can lift up very easily and get 1 or 2 or 3 shades lighter just using this eraser. So looking at this guy, this is a few hours of work. So again, it's layering, it's patience. And as I mentioned before about Albrecht Dürer's rabbit, when you look on my Instagram, you'll see his was a watercolor and gouache painting, but he did this technique with the paint. He had the paint a little thicker. First he did a wash of watercolor, and then he just did line after line after line with a slightly thicker paint in white and brown and black, and you would swear that you could touch that rabbit. It's just absolutely incredible. Don't forget the little triangle at the front of the eye. Under the chin is an area that I just did this. You can also do all kinds of lines. It's if you're working on a wired haired dog and it's like really crazy fur, you would change your lines. Let's put in his paws before we finish up tonight. And oh, one last thing. You can shade so his head is not too dark. So I'm going to shade very lightly, right? Just very lightly. Then add lines as well. So when I first looked at this rabbit, I just saw like two paws hanging down. Then after studying it, I saw all the turns and bends. So that's why observation and looking at something and learning and getting anatomy, posters, large and small, or books are really good to do, and it'll help you train your eye to see. So this arm came down a little bit like this, and then it angled a little bit like this, and up. And I've probably mentioned to you in the past that when I was in college in life study drawing class, my teacher, Manny Bromberg, was trying to show me how to do the leg of my subject. And I couldn't see it. I could not see the angle he was telling me about, and he drew it on my drawing. I still have the drawing today. Then he drew it, and I still couldn't see it. I couldn't see what he could see, but he was in his 60s, and I was 20. So that's one of the great things about getting older. You actually get better at seeing. This one came down like this. I'm looking at my negative space here and here. And a few lines for the paws. So there are many ways to approach a subject. There are many ways to do things. And that's one of the great things I love about teaching, is even when I've prepared a class and I think of all the steps ahead of time to present the project, students will come up with unique ways of doing things, and that's really one of the most awesome things about being human. So I hope that you will draw what you love. If it's an animal you especially love, look at art history. Look at how it's been painted and drawn throughout history. Get anatomy, well, I was going to say get anatomy books, but these days you guys can just look on the phone. Everything's available on the phone, and that's a great thing. So don't forget to sign your work, and remember to put the date on it. You always want to be able to look back and know when you did something. Oh boy, so we've run out of time. The time goes so quickly. I'm really glad you joined me, and I hope you have a very good week, and stay well, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.